Michigan, we are so fortunate to be surrounded by a significant amount of fresh water. Thanks, Jackie. A significant amount of fresh water, of the world's fresh water. And as a result, we have a responsibility to actually care for and protect that water. So here's a little bit about Southeast Michigan. So no matter where you live, you are living in a watershed. In Detroit, our primary watershed is the Rouge watershed. It covers a significant part of the city. And Friends of the Rouge is a nonprofit organization that works primarily to protect the water quality in the Rouge River watershed. But if you're not in Detroit, you could be a part of the Huron watershed, depending on where you live, or the Clinton watershed, but this is just to give you an idea of where we are in our geography. And in Detroit specifically, we have a significant amount of impervious surface. So I'll show a graph in a second that kind of talks about what that is, but as you can see, Detroit has a significant amount of impervious surface. This means that when water hits our sidewalks, when it hits our driveways, it's running off into our sewage system, and it often looks something like this. So when to have an impervious surface, when you think about the roof or a driveway, water hits the surface and then it runs off. But when you have a pervious surface, think about our natural grasses or flowers or plants, water kind of seeps into the ground. And that is important for a couple of reasons. So first, Detroit has a combined sewage overflow system, which means that there's one single pipe that collects all our sanitary water, our sewage waste, and our stormwater. And when that pipe becomes too full, so under normal rain conditions, water enters that pipe and it flows to our wastewater treatment plants. But when we have too much water, so too much stormwater runoff and combined with too much sewage in our system, that sewage, and because it's mixed together, that sewage is partially screened and it overflows into our natural waterways. So when we think about what that looks like, it's bad for several reasons. So one of the reasons is that we do a lot of things on our driveway. So we wash our cars on our driveway. We might have oil leaks in our cars that run off into sewage, into our sewage system. And then that has an impact on not only our water quality, but also the wildlife that lives within the water. So if you think about the algae blooms in Lake Erie that make news almost annually, that is a result of pollutants from our runoff, from our driveways or other surfaces that runs off and creates challenges in our waterways. So what is green stormwater infrastructure and how does that relate to any of the sewage challenges or infrastructure processes that I just mentioned? So here are a couple examples of green stormwater infrastructure. We're going to talk a lot today about rain gardens. Rain gardens are beautiful gardens. For our purposes, they're planted with native plants, so plants that are native to Michigan. Native plants have much deeper roots. So the roots can be anywhere between 3 to 4 or 5 feet deep, whereas our grasses, your standard long grass, has roots that are only about 3 or 4 inches deep. And when you have really deep roots, that helps break up the soil, which allows more water to infiltrate. Another example of GSI are downspout disconnection. So in this image, you'll see that the sewer is capped off. So that downspout is no longer going directly into our sewer system. Instead, it's running out onto our lawn. And then a more engineered version of green infrastructure might be bioretention in parking lots. So as you can see from this example, the parking lot is sloped and it has, you see like these little channels where water flows in and plants help to manage, some of the water from the parking lot itself. So those are a few different examples of GSI. We're going to talk about a few different examples of that and projects related to that today. So engaging Detroiters in GSI, one of Sierra Club and Friends of the Rouge have a program called Rain Gardens to the Rescue. Informally, we've been running this program since 2011, but formally, we've been running it since 2015. And it connects residents with opportunities to learn about green infrastructure, to design green infrastructure projects for their own homes, and actually lead and assist with the install for those gardens. And here is a map of all the projects we have across the city. So as you can see, we are in all 7 districts. The city itself has districts, council districts. We are in all 7 districts across the city of Detroit. And you can see breakdown year by year where we've been working and where our projects are. So we're super proud of the work that we've done thus far to work in advanced green infrastructure in the city of Detroit. And this map, I think, really gives a great view of the impact that we've had across the city in this work. So one of the first gardens I want to touch on is Danny's garden. I don't know, is Danny on the call? Sorry. Danny might not be on the call. If Danny is on the call, just interrupt me. Danny's garden was installed in 2017. And one of the things that I really love about Danny's garden is that it takes up most of his lawn. So as you can see, we took a significant portion of his lawn to create his rain garden. And as you can see here, it's pretty much all of his front lawn. One thing that I didn't mention about our program that we require our gardens to be installed in folks' front yards. Part of that is because we disconnect downspouts and install downspouts as a part of the garden. And it creates visibility, it adds to neighborhood beautification, and it's really a conversation starter amongst neighbors. And so with that, I'm going to move on to Loretta's garden. I know Loretta is on the call today. I will pass it off to you. I have progress photos of your garden, so let me know when you want me to switch slides.
Oh, so what you want me to do, you say?
Just tell us a little bit about your rain garden, your process going through Rain Gardens to the Rescue, why you like your garden, just anything you want to share, really.
Oh, okay. I decided to do a rain garden because I was having flooding in my basement, and I know rain gardens help with infrastructure. So I was excited about having the 5-week course that I designed my rain garden as a shape of a butterfly. And it takes, I think it's 104 plants that's in my rain garden right now, the flowers. So I mean, it was just an exciting thing to do. It's still beautiful, as you know, I still have people complimenting on how beautiful it is.
Perfect. Thank you, Loretta. And this is a picture on the screen now of when Loretta's garden was first installed, and we're going to see how it has progressed since 2019. So this, one other thing that I didn't mention is we install these gardens not only with the homeowner, but with volunteers. So here you can see Loretta had a lot of folks helping her install this garden. It was an intergenerational process. So she has young people learning about rain gardens, learning about what they are, and actually helping to install, which is awesome. And you will see that they are crowded around a Rain Gardens to the Rescue sign. So everyone who participates in our program receives a sign to tell folks more about what the garden is and why someone may have it in their front yard. So here's a beautiful nighttime photo of Loretta's garden. She's done a lot to enhance it. So it's not just about the plants. She's installed some lights around and some pavers to really outline the garden and give it shape. And you can see as it has progressed over years and seasons, there are additional trinkets in the garden. The flowers are filling in quite well. They're in full bloom. You can see the variety in both height and texture in terms of flowers versus grasses. And so that gives you an idea of kind of so if you think about the pictures that we showed earlier of Loretta's garden, and even the pictures that we showed of Danny's garden, you can get an idea for how gardens start to fill in over time. So I just want to give a few highlights about the 2021 Rain Gardens to the Rescue program, which we wrapped up in August of this year. We were able to install 8 rain gardens, which removed and replaced 1,264 square feet of lawn. We are capturing water from 5,279 square feet of impervious surface, and collectively, these gardens will hold 7,388 gallons of water each time it rains. So when you think about collective impact, just in the work that we've done since 2011 to install these gardens, and that we continue to do, you can see that we're collecting a significant amount of water and diverting that from our stormwater system. So I'm going to show a few. Yes.
Let me stop you real quick. I believe Danny is on. So if you'd like to talk about his garden, I know he actually also took it upon himself to add an additional rain garden on the other side of his house as well. So he is gung-ho on rain gardens, and I'm sure he has some great points to add if you'd like.
Perfect. Thanks, Jackie.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, I get a lot of attention, but most people still don't know what the purpose of a rain garden is in my neighborhood. I think the city should do a lot more to educate people about the value of having a rain garden. It's hard sometimes for me to explain it to them because they don't get the whole concept of how it works. It's always start from the roof and go to the rain garden to the storm drain. And all they see is the plants. And they say, I got a yard full of plants that's overgrown. And they don't understand the concept of rain garden. So maybe one day the city will get on board and educate the community a little bit more about rain gardens. But I understand it. It works for me.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the things that we try to do through our program. And we'll look at a couple more projects that are happening around the city that are trying to address some of the concerns that Danny brought up. And also talk a little bit more about like where the city is in this work a little bit later in the presentation. But Danny, thank you for bringing that up, because I also think that I didn't, while going through this presentation, for folks who might not know what a rain garden is, I can take a little bit and explain, and I'll use Alicia's garden as an example of what this looks like, because we have some really great progress photos. So Alicia was one of our participants this summer. She was really excited to install a rain garden. And she has this tree that she's standing next to, and she wanted to think about the longevity of that tree in her rain garden design. So you can kind of notice the orange spray paint near her feet. That gives you an idea of where we decided we were going to place the garden once we install. And I also want to point out, next to her awning, you can see her white gutter, and that's the gutter that we actually use to feed her garden. So for all of our rain gardens, we actually disconnect the downspout and route it into the rain gardens that we install. So Alicia was really excited about the idea of having a dry creek bed for her garden. So we were able to extend her downspout towards a ditch essentially that we dug out and lined with pond liners so that we wouldn't lose any water to infiltration. And we went back and filled that ditch lined with pond liner with gravel that would allow the water to seep through. And then she had those larger beige decorative stones. She found those, and we were able to incorporate that into the design to add both a little bit of texture and interest to kind of highlight how water is moving towards the garden in a more visible way. Because typically when we do these installs, we disconnect the downspout and then dig under the sod with tubing so that folks are still able to mow over it. Alicia's garden kind of brings that process to the surface, and it allows another educational opportunity for folks to really engage with what the gardens are doing. And so when it was all completed, you can see her beautiful dry creek bed flowing into the garden, the plants, and then all her volunteers. So as I mentioned before, we request that folks have a lot of volunteers to do this. Alicia actually had some of her neighbors who she both invited to help out with the process, but also they saw us outside working, and they were like, hey, what is that? What are those plants? Why are you digging up her front lawn? Which created another opportunity for us to engage with the community and do some of that education that Danny explained was so needed to tell people what rain gardens are. Another really great example of some of the work we did this year was Tiffany's garden. I wanted to highlight Tiffany's garden for a couple reasons. One, we worked in a side lot next to her home. She was able to purchase, I think, about 3 lots. So we took a portion of one of those lots to create her garden. That was a really exciting process. But Tiffany also did a lot of research in the plants and the type of native plants that she selected, because she wanted it to not only be a rain garden, but to also be a medicinal garden. So a lot of the plants that she picked also have medicinal purposes, and she is excited to begin to explore that as a part of her process. So Tiffany's garden was really awesome. As you can see, she also had a large number of volunteers, many of whom who hadn't done a lot of gardening before, and they were all really excited to get their hands dirty and explore and learn more about this process. And the last garden that I want to highlight from the 2021 program is John's garden. As you can see by the design, John is a super talented artist, which we found out while getting to know him through the process of workshops and just the classes. And so he had a very detailed vision for his garden and what plants he wanted there, which made the process really exciting and interesting. And we also took a significant portion of his lawn in order to be able to create this installation. And on the left, we have a photo of John's garden when it was first installed. So you can see his small transplants that those will fill in over the next 3 years. After about 3 years, that's when the garden is really established. But John was in one of the neighborhoods that was hit hardest by those storms that we had in June and July of this year. So if you look at the picture on the right, it shows a really great example of how rain gardens function in the rain. His garden did exactly what it was supposed to do. In the heavy, you can see from the car that the street is completely flooded in front of him, and his rain garden is holding a significant amount of water. As you can see, the plants are almost covered. And so that did drain over the next couple of days. Our gardens are designed to drain within 2 days. But just to give you an idea of what a rain garden can look like in the rain, I think this is a really great example, and the duality of his rain garden functioning as it should next to the flooded street in front of him is it's a strong reminder of like why we're doing some of this work. Of course, rain gardens will not prevent the massive kind of street flooding that we definitely saw on highways and in communities across Detroit and the suburbs this summer, but it does help, especially in smaller rain events, to prevent pooling on lawns that can be detrimental to our stormwater system. And so I also wanted to point out one quote from Alicia. Quote, installing a rain garden during a 500-year flood gave me a deeper appreciation for the project. At first, I was focused on the benefits it has for pollinators and was excited to have one less section of grass to cut. I knew about the relief rain gardens have on the city's stormwater infrastructure, but this was made even clearer to me when you see the damage flooding has on homes and pollution in our lakes and rivers. So that kind of gives you an idea of how what we're teaching in our courses, and also how people are beginning to think about GSI in the grand scheme of what's going on in our communities.
And Elaine, we're having some great conversation in the chat too. Awesome. I just wanted to bring up if you wanted to talk a little bit more about it. Janet was wondering a little bit about required maintenance for rain gardens. Loretta had touched on there's just a lot of weeds. And then Lorraine had also asked the recommended starting size, as well as kind of how we do the edges of our rain gardens with that berm, and if they wear down over time. I know that was a lot, so
no.
I'd like to touch on.
So I'll start. Maintenance is really intense. I would say, especially the first 3 years. You definitely, when you start your garden, you want to put down a good layer of mulch. And you also want to maintain that mulch over the first couple of years to make sure your garden is really functioning as it should. Mulch will help suppress the weeds. And if you notice, in Tiffany's garden, well, in all the gardens, but you can see it kind of in Tiffany's photo, we have little labels, especially the first, after the first winter, that first spring, it might be hard to know, like, what's a plant, what's a weed. So we strongly encourage folks to label as they plant. And we definitely recommend that you start with transplants and not seeds. So that way you have an idea of what plants look like. Whereas if you're starting with seeds, things are germinating and it's more challenging to tell what's a weed and what's not. There were more questions that I forgot as I was answering this one. So Jackie, if you want to take a stab at any of those, feel free.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so one of the questions was about sizing. So the way we size our rain gardens, we do go over this extensively in our Rain Garden to the Rescue workshops. So those are open to the public, of course, so you can always join us for those workshops, even if you aren't receiving a garden through our program. So the way we size it, we kind of take the square footage of the roof, since we are taking it from residential roofs with the gutters. We size it for about a third of the water that it's taking off the roof. So say you have 100 square foot roof area that will be draining to the garden. You would want it to at least be around 33 square feet to be sure that it's large enough to hold on to all that water coming off of the roof. But of course, you can always go bigger. We always love when people go bigger. You get more plants, you get to hold on to more water, it's more wildlife habitat. Or if you don't have as much space in your front yard for that 30%, there is also an option that you could go a little bit deeper and have the smaller size. So it's a little bit of an art and a little bit of a science that way. Elaine, if you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just if you're planning to do your own, make sure that the bottom of your garden is flat. That's how we make sure that, you know, we're not only capturing the right amount of water, but that is being evenly distributed amongst all the plants. So you'll still want to put your plants that can tolerate the most water in the center, but make sure that garden is flat so that you aren't like drowning out one section of your plants. That would be my only other tip. And I think another question that I don't think I answered was how do we handle the berm? So we dig all our gardens out by hand. And that's why we require so many volunteers, because it's a lot of work, and we can do it faster if we have more hands, and it typically takes us about 3 hours to install a garden. So you can kind of see a berm more clearly on Tiffany's. We are flipping sod over so that the grass side meets the existing grass that is there, and then we're newspapering over that like bump, so to speak, and that keeps the water from overflowing, and it also creates a more defined edge for the garden, which makes it easier for you to protect your plants as you are maintaining the exterior edge. We do not recommend using weed fabric. Plants grow through it. It's a nightmare to deal with if you're trying to fix something or address different challenges in the garden. So we don't recommend weed fabric, but newspaper is a great way. Cardboard breaks down over time. That can be a great way to establish your berm and prevent weeds. Am I missing any other ideas, Jackie?
No, I think you covered it all. Yeah, we were also talking about how the berm does kind of flatten over time. But it's really great when we're first installing the garden. It adds a lot of extra capacity while those plants are still small and might not be able to pull down all that water. So in that way, it's definitely great to have, especially when you're first starting your rain garden.
Yeah, and in the beginning, you will have to add, like the first couple of years, you may need to add more mulch just as some of it erodes or becomes shallower in different spots, and that should help keep the weeds down. Perfect. So we were just about to talk about some of the co-benefits of GSI, and for that, I want to talk briefly about some of our work with St. Suzanne's Cody Rouge Community Resource Center. So in addition to working with individual homeowners, we also work with houses of worship to install, and local nonprofits to install small, St. Suzanne's doesn't have small gardens, but we work with them to install small gardens. And I think a really great example of how that partnership grows over time is with St. Suzanne's Cody Rouge. So St. Suzanne started off with one smaller educational garden. And as you can see from these photos, they have some pretty large gardens now. We've been able to expand our partnership with this organization to both help them manage stormwater and reduce their stormwater credits. So in Detroit, there is a drainage fee based on the amount of impervious surface you have. And for large houses of worship or houses of worship with large parking lots like St. Suzanne's, that fee can be pretty expensive. And for houses of worship and business owners and nonprofits, the city does offer a drainage credit to help them offset some of that cost. And so we're starting to see more houses of worship, businesses, and nonprofits install green infrastructure. But one of the things that I think is great about St. Suzanne's, they have a pretty high traffic neighborhood that the church sits in. It gets a lot of foot traffic and folks are always walking by looking at the gardens, but they also run a youth program, and they've been able to incorporate some education around rain gardens and green infrastructure into the youth STEM classes they host every summer. And so this is a really great way or a great example of how GSI provides benefits for co-benefits for community members. It's not just about managing stormwater, it's about restoring pollinator habitat. It's about creating green spaces that people can enjoy, whether it's on a walk or if they're sitting down near like a large rain garden or interacting with wildlife and learning more about the insects that are there. And in the case of St. Suzanne's, they're using these gardens to actually educate young people around GSI. So when Danny talks about the need for more folks to know, I think what St. Suzanne's is trying to do in terms of engaging young people and educating them on green infrastructure is cultivating a new generation of young people who will be excited and who will understand and will promote care of community green infrastructure installation. So it won't be just like, what is that? And it looks kind of weedy and I'm super unsure. It'll be like, I know what that is. It's a rain garden. And it's actually providing benefits, and we should help care for it, even if, you know, it isn't in our backyards. We know when we're walking that this is something that should be cared for. So they're doing really great work there. And I just wanted to highlight that. And then we're going to talk about a couple other GSI projects in Detroit. So it's not just us. We're not the only folks doing this. There are lots of people working on it. And there are a couple of cool projects that are a little different than the gardens that we typically talk about that I want to highlight. So this is a green alley near Green Garage. Green Garage is a co-working space in the Midtown area of the city of Detroit. This alley is awesome because it's one of the city's first, or the city's first green alley. And if you notice on the sides where you see the concrete and the little grasses in between, those are all permeable pavers. So the middle path that we see is raised a little bit, and then the impervious part is raised a little bit, and then the permeable plantings on the side in terms of the pavers and then the plants they've selected help to capture the storm water that runs off that alley. So if you're ever in the Midtown area, I encourage you to check out the Green Garage alley. It's always open, it doesn't close, so you can kind of walk through it, and it's really cool. And another project that I want to highlight is the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. They have pervious pavers in their front parking area. And this is the project that, even when I mention it today, a lot of folks have no idea that it's there. But I want to bring it up for a couple of reasons. One, is because of how discreet the project is. So if you look at the photo here, that dark gray portion is actually all pervious pavers. So when water comes in from the impervious surfaces, so that lighter concrete, it pours into the pervious pavers and seeps to an underground cistern that they have that collects some of the water. But the other part of this project that I think is really cool is that the design inside of the pervious pavers is a West African symbol called a Sankofa, which is a bird that has its beak pointed towards the door. And the meaning of the Sankofa symbol in West African culture is that you have to understand where you're coming from in order to move forward. And so the beak of the bird actually faces the entry to the Charles H. Wright Museum. So if you think about the museum as a body of history, right? So folks go there to learn where they come from so they can understand how to move forward. And so this is a really great integration of both, like something discrete that people who are visiting and aren't familiar with green infrastructure might not even notice, but also something that provides a cultural aspect. It ties into the meaning of the building and provides the integration of art into the design of the green infrastructure. So that's another really cool example of projects that are going on around the city. And the last project that I want to talk about, this is actually a project led by DWSD, and it's on Evergreen Road. So they took a area where Detroit was tearing down homes through their home demolition program, and they replaced that home with a rain garden that collects stormwater from the street. So the rocks that you see, they actually connect to a street basin, and water from that street basin flows into this planting that they have of native plants. So it's difficult to see from this photo, but they have purple coneflower, they have some serviceberry bushes that are all collecting water, and a number of other native plants that have both helped to add green space to this neighborhood, but also restore some of that pollinator and wildlife habitat. And if you're interested in learning more about GSI in the city of Detroit, the Detroit Stormwater Hub is a really great resource for this. It has both projects that the city has led, as well as private projects, maybe at local businesses, or even some of our residential projects installed through Rain Gardens to the Rescue on the Stormwater Hub. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. So opportunities to get involved. We have a number of opportunities to get involved if you're interested in GSI. One of those is through Rain Gardens to the Rescue. As Jackie mentioned, we typically have information about that. It typically goes out in March or April, and we begin to advertise and recruit applications for that. So if you're interested in just learning more, or maybe you want to install your own at your home, that's a great opportunity for you to get involved. Other than that, is Vaughn on the call?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. So I will pass it to you to talk a little bit about Land and Waterworks, and then a bit about our partnership with Sacred Grounds.
But yes, so for the past couple of years, I've been serving as an ambassador for Detroit Future Cities Land and Waterworks program. This year, in prior years, we focused on residents. And so we wanted to put the word out to fellow citizens about GSI. This year, the focus is on faith-based organizations. So we've been working hard to kind of spread the word so that all the churches or synagogues or whatever, as long as they're faith-based, so that they can get the credits and whatnot from DWSD. So with that said, we'd like to make sure, or at least announce, that we do have an opportunity for the 275-gallon water totes. This opportunity is kind of time sensitive. We need to hear from people tomorrow, but we have a small quantity of water totes that will be available. We have about 5 or so. So we just want to make sure that it is a faith-based organization, and that what our plan is to have the actual installation next year in the springtime. So if you have anyone interested, please reach out to us immediately. We apologize for the fast turnaround, but this opportunity is available through a special mini grant that Detroit Future City awarded us.
Perfect.
So,
thanks, Vaughn.
Yes. So like I said, if you guys are interested, spread the words, but it's hot off the press. We need to get the contracts back to DFC by Friday. So, but again, if anyone is interested, reach out to me directly, or Elaine, Cindy, or Jackie.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So as Vaughn mentioned, we're working with Land and Waterworks Coalition to help connect people and educate people on green infrastructure, and specifically this year, business owners and houses of worship. But we also have a partnership, and when I say we, Sierra Club and Friends of the Roots, we also have a partnership with National Wildlife Federation through their Sacred Grounds program. So Sacred Grounds is a program that helps houses of worship essentially receive pollinator gardens to enhance and add to the teachings in their service to the community. So a great project that I want to talk about today that has been installed through the Sacred Grounds program. We have funding to install a few large-scale green infrastructure projects. So this is the project that was installed at Jesu Catholic Church and School. As you can see, this is a massive, massive garden that is managing quite a bit of rain water from their downspouts. Those black tubes are how we funnel the water from the downspouts that you see on the building to the actual rain garden. For folks who may be concerned, we did not dig this one out by hand, so don't worry. We had an excavator to kind of help us with a project this large. And as a part of this project, there were definitely young people who were involved, who helped to install and learn about the project. And then following the install, there was a large sign. So for larger sites, we usually have a very large educational sign to help folks understand what they're looking at and learn more about the plants that are in each installation. Jackie or Cindy, do you have anything you want to add to the Jesu project? I can't see you, so just say no.
Sure. Sure, I can add just that. So the Jesu project was a much more expensive project than we could afford, but they were a recipient of the DWSD Capital Partnership Program funding. And so this is a rather expensive project. I think they spent about $100,000 for the excavation and the piping to be placed into the garden, as well as the aggregate and soil. So this one is designed, really, this one is designed by an engineer to manage a very large amount of water. It's receiving runoff from nearly half of the school. So it's managing hundreds of thousands of gallons per rain event and millions of gallons a year. So this is a very important rain garden just based on the size, the volume of water that it's managing. It's really is really significant. If Detroit doesn't manage, or really I should say keep billions of gallons of rainwater out of the combined sewer system annually, we, Detroit, and obviously the taxpayers of Detroit are going to have to pay for the installation of great infrastructure, which will cost many millions, if not closer to $1 billion. So we're saving money by doing this work. And I guess you probably will say this next, Elaine, but we do have funding to do more of these gardens.
Yep, perfect. That was exactly what was next. So you were right on it. So we do have funding, as Cindy mentioned, to do more of these projects through the Sacred, or in partnership with the Sacred Grounds program through National Wildlife Federation. So if you know a Detroit House of Worship that may be interested, or if you know members of a Detroit House of Worship that may be able to pass information on to their membership, Tiffany Carey is the primary contact for that. She leads the Sacred Grounds program in Michigan and is a great resource. And if you're just interested more generally in the National Wildlife Federation Sacred Grounds program, I encourage you to go to their website. Even if you are not a member of or from a Detroit-based House of Worship, Sacred Grounds has a number of resources to get you started on green or on pollinator plants and pollinator gardens. So if you are interested at all at increasing access to pollinator habitat, whether it be through a rain garden or a traditional pollinator garden, I encourage you to seek more information about the Sacred Grounds program. And with that, we are at the question segment. So I know there has been some activity going on the chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now and go over any other questions you all may have. Got it. Oh, there's been a lot of activity in the chat. I'm so sad I couldn't see it while I was presenting.
And I just wanted to add on, I know we've been talking a lot about houses of worship. They are like one of the major partners that we like to work with, because they are some of the groups that have been hit hardest by the new stormwater charges, because they have usually large buildings themselves and a large parking lot. for everyone coming. That is why we focus a lot on houses of worship. And because it is a great way to connect to the community, creating space where you can connect with green infrastructure, with wildlife and pollinators, and just have a deeper appreciation for all the wildlife around you as well.
Yeah, and to give you an idea of how some other houses of worship are incorporating green infrastructure. So some folks are thinking of using it as a site to host their like Bible study courses, or to learn about stewardship and care, or even incorporating it into their vacation Bible school curriculum. So there are definitely lots of ways to not only just have it, but to use it as a teaching tool, whether that be for STEM or faith-based purposes. Nice. Lori mentioned the rain gardens and the median of Oakman Boulevard, North Retirement. I think that's a pretty new, Cindy, I think that's a pretty new project. I want to say last year or the year before. But yes, that project is awesome. And the city is definitely, DWSD itself is also starting to install a lot more green infrastructure than they had historically. So it's nice to see not only like folks like us who are perfect, Lori, yes, they were planted in 2020. Yeah, so it's nice to see folks like us who are both doing like the education piece and installing rain gardens at the residential level, but also working on these larger projects. It's nice to see more very large scale city-based projects going in. There are a few at parks across the city, and I think those are really cool. They look really good. Any other questions or comments before we wrap up?
I just also wanted to point out once more the amazing Detroit Stormwater Hub. There are tons of different projects on there. They have rain gardens, disconnected downspouts, permeable pavers. One that they have featured on there right now is actually at a church at Sacred Heart. That one I think was a bit more of a project in itself because it was retrofitting their parking lot with rain gardens. But we love rain gardens because it is like such a cost-effective way to manage so much stormwater, and you get so many benefits from it too.
Lorraine asked a great question about, have people noticed more squirrels and critters? I don't know about squirrels specifically, but I definitely know folks are seeing like more butterflies. They're seeing crickets. They're definitely seeing a large variety of insect species. I don't know, Loretta, I see you shaking your head. Have you had any like critters? Yeah, more birds.
No, I haven't seen no critters. I have seen some beautiful blue butterflies, black butterflies, ladybugs, bees, different color birds and things like that. But I seen less squirrels. I don't really have a lot of squirrels around, or the critters.
Nice.
Mm.
Yeah, as we say, if you build it, they will come. And oh boy, sure do they.
Yeah, Vaughn is saying that she's seen a praying mantis. That's pretty cool. Can rain gardens double for edible vegetable gardens? Cindy or Jackie, feel free to hop in, but we typically don't because they connect to our downspouts, so you're capturing like some of the roof runoff. So I know like Tiffany has some plants that she plans to use for herbal purposes, but I don't know that we've ever incorporated we've never incorporated vegetable plants in our gardens. We've only done florals. Cindy or Jackie?
I think we have actually had one
okay.
where the resident had some tomatoes that he planted. Cindy can maybe talk a little bit more about that. And I think Vaughn could also speak to how she uses stormwater for her vegetable garden. Yeah, with just an emphasis on making sure the water that you use.
Yes, I'd be more than happy. This is fine. So yeah, I actually use my water toast to water my vegetable garden. And the key thing is that you must use the water on the soil, not the plants at all. And I'm a firm believer of using as little water as I can in my garden. but this year my garden was just fabulous. But I'm a proponent of watering the soil, not the plant. I know a lot of time people, I can see them, they stand out and they just watering the plant like as if it was grass and whatnot. You don't do it like that. Like I said, you water the soil. The soil is what needs to water, and then that will feed into the plant and everything. So, but I didn't use any faucet water at all for my garden this year. Not zero, none of it.
Awesome.
Thanks,
So
Vaughn.
it's good. Yes.
Sorry, I wanted to chime in just to note that the reason that is so important, and thank you, Vaughn, for saying that, is that your roof shingles are asphalt roof shingles, and so you don't want it to consume any of those contaminants. And so by placing the water directly on the soil, much of that is going to get bound up into the soil and not in your plants. You never want to direct road runoff water into your vegetable garden for that same reason. You just don't want any of the oils or road salt or other contaminants that would come off of the road onto your food. So that's why that's important. So thanks for mentioning that, Vaughn.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Perfect. Thanks, you all. Any other questions before we hop off? Perfect. Well, I want to thank
I don't
you
have a
all.
question, but I did
ahead.
want to just say thank you guys. This is one of the most interesting conversations that I've been involved in about GSI. So I think it's really, really good. And maybe we individually can help spread the word about the importance of it.
Yes, yeah, definitely spread the word. I was going to say that if you have any questions about rain gardens or GSI, reach out to myself or reach out to Jackie. Friends of the Rouge and Sierra Club Michigan chapter are both online, so check out our websites. And I think that's all. Thank you all so much. I want to say our work is generously supported by the Herb Family Foundation, so we're really thankful for their contribution that allows us to both do this education and do this outreach like we are on Zoom today. I appreciate the conversation that went on in the chat and the questions you all asked, and I look forward to continuing this work and continuing these conversations with folks.